I didn't. I thought you brought that back. It's the same information you emailed to me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, if I leave, are you good to take it all down?
Yes.
Cool, thanks.
How we doing, Mr. IT genius?
Yeah, I got some work that needs to be done out at my office.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You gotta, you're right.
didn't get the
You need some
memo?
work done, those
We got a new
doors.
IT branch in Public Works. He's left my office.
Hey, Joe, how are you? Was that yours? I didn't see the sign until I got in there.
Unwritten parking spot. It's the one that no one knows why.
There you go. Have fun. Take one. Which is for the city.
Oh, no, I was just giving you a calendar.
That's Miller. Dropped his off at my neighbor's house. Yeah. Tom Jones' house. Goes on. Just, you know, be nice for you. No,
Well, it's a concrete street, so we got asphalt and concrete out. We're going by that. Pretty good. Didn't find that. I think it's right where we can't do it.
This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. Have roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Present.
Commissioner Holton, here, Commissioner Friedman,
Here.
Commissioner Stern, here, Commissioner Reddington.
We'll now have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. First order of business are the consent items. Is there a motion from the commission to approve the consent items?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to pass the consent items.
I'll second.
Motion by Friedman, second by Hoagland. Roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Holton, yes, Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Stern.
Motion passes. There are no proclamations tonight. There are no scheduled public comments. We do have two public hearings. The first public hearing is ordinance 2060, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending section 4-41 entitled Civil Offensive Exceptions by adding an exception to subpart C pertaining to the Waterworks Park located between 9th and 10th Streets in Livingston, Montana. So,
This is the second reading of this ordinance, the first being at the December 1st meeting, with citizen comments and an action item at the November 17th meeting. This ordinance would officially create an off-leash area at the water park at the corner of 9th Street and River Drive. Upon passage of this ordinance, it would become law after 30 days or January 15th. Yeah, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
okay, great, thank you very much. This is a public hearing, so this public hearing on ordinance 2060 is now open. Is there any public who'd like to comment on that ordinance? Proposed ordinance. Seeing none, this public hearing is now closed. We have a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we pass ordinance 2060.
I'll second.
Motion by Friedman, second by Hoagland. Any commission discussion? No? Okay. Only want to mention just for the public record that I did get one email in opposition to it, so I think everyone got that. All right, roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes,
Commissioner Holman,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern,
motion passes. The second ordinance for public hearing tonight is ordinance number 2060, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending section 11-32 entitled Establishment of Limits and section 11-43 entitled Storage and Transportation of Liquid Petroleum Gas, additional limits, by adding language to permit storage of liquefied petroleum gas in the city limits on certain conditions. So,
This is also the second reading of this ordinance, the first again being on December 1st, following the scheduled public comment at the November 17th meeting. This ordinance would allow for a permitting process for liquefied petroleum in addition to the diesel, above ground diesel tank to be allowed within the city limits if approved by the appropriate officials. And again, this ordinance will become effective 30 days after passage or January 15th. If there are any other questions, we can certainly answer them for you.
thank you very much. This is a public hearing. This public hearing on ordinance number 2061 is now open. Is there any public who would like to comment on ordinance 2061? The amendments. Seeing none, this public hearing is now closed. And we have a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we pass ordinance 2061.
second.
Motion by Friedman, second by Hoagland. Is there any commission discussion? Okay,
We had two questions on the table to be answered. And one was if all the neighbors had been contacted. Do we have that answer?
Yes, Commissioner Hoagland. Lisa in my office worked with the GIS department to get the addresses of everybody within 500 feet of the proposed location. Those notifications went out, and I think we sent them to every landowner that was on the list. I believe there are, how many landowners were there?
There was only one landowner, but he had three separate addresses, so I sent it to each of his addresses. And two of the responses came back. They weren't delivered, but the other didn't come back, so I assume we still.
Can Lisa speak into the microphone?
Is that
Can Lisa speak into the microphone?
So we actually sent out, there were only three addresses within that 500-foot area that weren't related to Carter Bay or Montague, those properties, or related to MRL. And it was just one owner, but he had three different addresses, so I sent it to each of his addresses.
2 of those responses, 2 of the letters came back non-deliverable, but the other one didn't come back as not delivered. So we assume that was delivered.
And I have one more question. I know that this is an ordinance that is enforced through the fire department in some realm or another. So say if the business owner sold the business, and everyone has spoken very highly of you, and we appreciate that. I guess my worry is who the next owner, like how will we enforce the ordinance with another owner that might not be quite so awesome? That's this guy.
I think no matter who owns the business, they're gonna be subject to these ordinances, and the fire chief, when he approves or provides a permit for Mr. Dowell, I believe his name is, there are gonna be special requirements placed on Mr. Dowell's business, like the monitoring and things like that, and that will continue if there is a new owner or a successor in interest to Mr. Dowell's business. It is our intent, and I know it's the fire chief's intent, to make sure that safety precautions are followed no matter who is running that business down there in the river.
It's, a lot of people are asking just about those safety concerns in particular, so I appreciate the answer. That's all for me.
Any other commission discussion? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Bowman,
Yes.
Commissioners Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Stern,
Motion passes. There are no other ordinances tonight, no resolutions. There are several action items. The first one is to discuss, approve, deny Public Works Director's recommendation regarding downtown PER presentation. And we heard the presentation by Keith Waring and of Thomas Dean and Hoskins last meeting. Ms. Hope.
I would ask Shannon Holmes, Public Works Director, to get up there for the presentation.
Good evening. As I previously stated, the downtown PER is a collaborative effort between the City of Livingston, Prospera, and several of the downtown organizations such as the Division Living, the Downtown Design Committee, and the URA in specific. So it's been a pleasure working with all those entities, and very happy to present, like I said, a comprehensive document that takes all the past studies and brings those to one document, comprehensive document, updated cost estimates for all infrastructure related items in the downtown area. So we gave that document to the URA about a month and a half ago, not received any comments about that, either positive or negative. So I will take that as a positive. And like I said, Keith has been here previously a couple times to give that presentation. If you have any technical questions, I'll do my best. If not, I'd be happy to write those down and respond accordingly after consulting with him. Other than that, I open the floor to questions.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Stern.
So thanks for posting that. I did read the report. It is indeed, like you said, quite comprehensive. It looks really good. So the only things to ask, not even about the report, it's just information I gleaned from it. So this year's CIP is Main and County, right?
Yes, that is
And then
correct.
after that is the 2 other blocks of Main, the next year.
We have a bid alternate that would be the intersection of Main and Lewis, and I'd have to look at the phasing plan, so I apologize.
But this year we got that block of Main, blocks of County.
Yes.
And so our building and business owners, we're all going to be made aware of this well in advance so they can plan and all that stuff. I know it's going to be contentious as you do.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up. We actually wrote letters to the downtown business owners in September. We sent that certified, and we've now had 3 meetings. Fourth is 4.
We've already had 4.
4, and a 5th is scheduled for this Thursday. So we've had a lot of correspondence through certified mail with Matt, who's done an excellent job. And like I said, workshops in the evenings, typically on Thursday nights. So we certainly are working through all the challenges, and I think we're all aware that the vaults are certainly at the top of that list, but certainly scheduling is a big issue that we need to work through. There's a lot of big events planned in 2016 in Livingston, the Centennial, the National Park Service, the Hoot, the Federation of Fly Fishers. So I think we're doing a very good job of keeping the communication lines open with the downtown folks.
What percentage, roughly speaking, of the affected businesses and/or building owners have you heard back from?
Well, we've had great participation at the meetings themselves. Our original date we were shooting for to get an answer on either if vault owners were going to rehabilitate those or fill them in. Downtown, the Vault Association hired Bodette consulting firm out of Missoula to do a preliminary engineering report on the vaults. And the original assessment of just size and overall condition was submitted in late November. And then on the 1st of December, 2nd of December, they followed that up with some preliminary cost estimates. And those are actually presented to city staff last Thursday night. And we have told the downtown folks we'd love to look at that and provide any observation or recommendations based on the cost estimates. I can't speak for the downtown, but I can tell you the overall theme of that evening was there were a lot of people surprised at how expensive the rehabilitation was compared to what they maybe previously thought.
Very good. So in particular, I was asking because of how many of the folks on Main Street are aware that their block is going to be ripped up this summer?
To my knowledge, everybody in the downtown area has been aware. Either direct contact through city staff or certainly word of mouth with the workshops that we're having. So,
good. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. If I might add, it is my intention certainly that this PER is a living document. So that is one of the benefits of having TD&H as our city engineer now. So as things arise, if we need to amend that document, we can certainly do so and attach any new information on the documents that are interested on the website. So thank you.
Did you yield?
Yes.
Okay, is there any other commission discussion? Any public comments regarding the PER?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
First of all, I want to compliment the Public Works Director. I think he's done a superb job. We have had our communication lines closed down for some time, and he has worked hard to open them up. And the downtown building owners that I know and have talked to, which, as I've told you before, when I email someone, I email 124 downtown building owners. And we have an 11-person downtown building owners board. A subcommittee of our board is the Livingston Underground Association, which consists of the 8 people who have vaults on Calendar Street between 2nd and B Street. And consistently, to a person, they took a look, they took the initiative, as you well know, to get Karen Burns here. That committee has, the committee had then initiated the Bodette study. It's the first time we've actually had concrete figures on what it would actually cost. And the reality is that the cost is so great. It's very close as to whether, well, it's not very close, but it's close enough to whether you keep the square footage in your underground, which is part of your building, that's the vault, or you fill it in. So to a person, they have opted consistently to keep that square footage in their building. Remember, this is the This is the Heffernan Building, this is the Thompson Building. These are significant historic buildings in downtown Livingston. This is the Saxon Fire Building. Moving forward, they have consistently also said that they have a request going into the ORA on Thursday to address the cost, because if they do not receive some sort of help, they will go under. I mean, $100,000, $140,000 for the building where the frame garden is, that's a third of the cost of that building. There's no way that the owner of that building, with the kind of profit margin you have, can possibly survive anything like that. In fact, legally, it's probably a taking, and it's probably creating a separate group. So there would be but what they want to do is work with the ORA to figure out a way to fund these things so that we can move forward. And because they have taken a serious look over at all of our public works directors' figures needing 110 days plus rain days, and they feel that we should start by March 15th. They excluded the idea of starting in the fall because then the streets are torn up all winter. And so they've done a lot of thinking, a lot of research. It would be nice to get some sort of meeting with the city commission and them. We hope to do I met with the acting city manager, which was really a treat, and Shannon and Matt about the up and coming 2016 National Parks Centennial. It's a significant thing. National Geographic has chosen Livingston as opposed to Gardner as the place that for the entire nation, since we are the first city, first entrance to Yellowstone. So all kinds of things are coming up. There's a lot of thoughtfulness that has gone into this. And we'd like to look forward to moving forward with this commission to work together. And that has been the theme. I'm just so grateful because that has been the theme recently, and it has produced really positive results where people take initiative and appreciate each other. And I want to say one more time, I think one of the leaders in all of this has been Shannon, and I think he's done a superb job. Just a public comment on this. Would like to move forward and stay in communication, and I would like to visit with each of you as well. Any questions? Just appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. You know how to get a hold of all of us.
Good, I do.
Good evening. My name is Jay Keeper, 227 South Second. Do I put the address?
Yes.
Good evening. I'm looking at action item A, and I am constantly amazed at the language that is used. I've come here before and said, when you use things like RIF or request for information or everything else, the PER, can somebody tell me what a PER is?
Preliminary engineering report.
What?
Preliminary engineering report.
Would it take that much more type or paper to print out the whole word in a commission agenda?
Certainly wouldn't, and you brought that up before, and it's just something that's kind of slipped. We're kind of
Well, I know, but I mean, for people that I've made a vow to make this, I'm going to just be here about once every month as opposed to every other meeting. But I see that we're slipping into the same old patterns on there, and I realize that commissioners and administrative people, they're used to talking the same language, but they have to realize that there are going to be people in attendance that are going to grab an agenda and they're going to read Public Works Director's recommendation regarding downtown PER presentation by Keith Waring, Dean and Hoskins. They're not going to have a clue what the PER is. And I just think this is this is journalism 101. Spell the word out first, and then you can go into initials afterwards. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Jay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, really quick to address Mr. Keeper's comments. I can make sure that going forward, when we do use abbreviations, we will spell it out. He's right. We should do that so the public knows exactly what we're referring to. So we will do that going forward.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Is there a motion from the commission?
I move we approve the PDR for downtown. Let's see.
We want to accept it without the word we'd rather have.
I move the city commission accept the PDR for downtown. I move we approve action item.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Stern, second by Hoagland. Further commission discussion? Roll call.
Chairperson Bennett?
Yes.
Commissioner Holbert? Yes. Commissioner Freeman?
Yes.
Commissioner Stern?
Motion passes. Second action item, discuss, approve, deny finance officer holds presentation and recommendations regarding financing and other payment options pertaining to the Durgan property purchase. Ms. Hoag.
My full memo is in your packet. I think I'll just give you a brief overview and let you know the status of my research. I did look at a few different funding options. One was a commercial loan at a local bank. One was utilizing traditional funding that we use, which is called intercap through the state of Montana. And the other would be cash payment. There is cash available within the Transportation Impact Fees Fund, as well as the Railroad Underpass Fund. So when I balance interest costs and availability of cash, the one thing that we as an administration, the Public Works Director and the interim city manager discussed is we weren't quite sure of all of the financial obligations required of the city moving forward. So until we were better aware of what obligations we have through the Department of Transportation and the state of Montana or MRL, we wanted to not completely deplete the Railroad Underpass Fund. We have undertaken a process where we are meeting with Dowell to get a history, to get all the documents, as this was not something we were previously very involved in. It was something the previous city manager really worked on. And so we just want to be up to speed before we completely deplete the Railroad Underpass Fund. So I guess my recommendation for the financing of that piece of property would be to pay $100,000 in cash, $50,000 from the Transportation Impact Fees Fund, and $50,000 from the Railroad Underpass Fund, and then to finance the remaining $150,000 through intercap. Right now, intercap's interest rate is 1.25. Last year, it was also 1.25, and the previous year, it was 1%. It is pretty low interest rates, and they anticipate it staying pretty low for now. And this would give us time to figure out our obligations, and then we can always pay that off early, but the interest cost would be very minimal. And then we have also begun the process of appraisal on the property. So that should be happening before the closing date. If there's any questions, I can certainly answer them. I don't know if we need approval or just, I think it's, yeah, just more of a discuss. If there's any questions, I can certainly answer.
And is there any discussion for the commission, first of all? Commissioner Stern? Okay. Commissioner Friedman? Okay. Everyone's waiting so far. Let's see. I didn't have any immediate questions. So are you looking then for, so when do they estimate the appraisal will be done?
They said that they could get that done before the 15th of January, which is the closing date.
Okay. And so the decision on financing, is that something the commission needs to decide upon before that date?
I would say yes. In the event the property appraises for the 250,000 level, the $250,000, which is a contingency in the contract, I think that we have a pretty rapid closing date after that appraisal. So I think we would want approval from the commission for the purchase funds prior to the appraisal being done. We don't necessarily need it today, but
So that
I
would
think
be
that would be
the
a
first,
wise idea, so we can get all our ducks in a row if we need to go to Intercap or go to a bank or something like that to obtain financing.
so that would be on the first meeting in January then, if we're gonna have it ready for you for closing date.
Yes, I think that would work best.
So those are my questions. Mr. Stern.
Great, thanks. So, the Intercap, 150 from the Intercap, and that's, you said it's a GO bond, general obligation bond.
It's not a general obligation bond. It would be payable out of the general fund, but it would not require voter approval.
Okay, very good. And then the railroad fund, remind me again of the balance. I gave my budget.
I believe it is 175,000 in unencumbered funds.
Okay.
So I believe we have some outstanding contracts.
And the transportation impact fees fund, remind me what that's used for and its balance.
Sure. The Transportation Impact Fee Fund, the revenues are generated when there are new construction, and it is to offset those properties' impact to, for instance, the transportation, so streets, sidewalks, etc. Those are used for capacity expanding improvements, so it cannot be used to replace existing streets or sidewalks or curbs, but it can be used to add streets, sidewalks, or ADA accessible ramps, those sort of things. There is approximately 200,000, maybe a bit more now, in that fund.
Was the public works director upset at the loss of these funds?
There is still some items that he got. I'm sure he'd rather use them for his projects. There is many projects that could work for this, but yeah.
Will it seriously hamper the operations going forward?
No, we're still gonna be able to be diligent with making improvements. So you'll see that in the capital improvement, the capital improvement plan that the commission will accept.
This recommendation, I guess it's a question, does this recommendation fall within the scope of your plans?
It wasn't originally, but certainly it fits in our purview. And that's why I think that's why we, I'm very comfortable with $50,000 expenditure.
All right.
And, certainly we're going to be meeting with Dow actually next week. And myself, Jesse, Eric, and Lisa Lowy will certainly have a lot better understanding of the obligation that the city has moving forward with the project.
Do you think if they move forward with this recommendation, which I think is well balanced, by the way, it's a good recommendation, Shannon, will it seriously affect, I know you have plans to throw in these ADA ramps all over town and that sort of thing. Is this seriously going to affect that?
So the nice thing is I actually had all my capital improvements for the street impact fees in prior to our discussion. And that was something certainly that Jesse and Lisa and we all looked at. And like I said, I'm very comfortable with the $50,000 expenditure.
Great, thank you. Well, given the recommendation, I think it's very reasonable, so I certainly would support it. Thank you.
Further commission discussion? Public comment? So we need public comment on action item B. All right, hearing none, you don't need a decision on this action item. Not
If you want to take time to think about it, that's fine. I mean, if somebody wants to make a motion, we certainly, if you'd like to take action on it, you can do that as well too.
What would that motion look like? Just approve the administration to move forward with this recommendation? Do the best they can.
Yes, and then I can begin the paperwork process for intercap and.
So,
Go ahead.
last, this is your number one choice then?
Yes, yes, yeah.
So there's nothing else that is potentially, a funding source that you wanted to visit before we make the decision?
No, I don't think so. Of course, I'd like for some benefactor to come forward and say, here's 250,000. But no, this is the most appropriate and financially feasible solution.
I move with direct administration to move forward with the finance director's recommendation.
Second.
So motion by Stern, second by Hoagland. To move forward with the recommendations for financing offered by the finance director. Roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland. Yes. Commissioner Freeman,
Four.
Commissioner Stern.
Four.
Motion passes. Action item C, submission of fiscal year 2014-2015 audit report. Ms. Hoag.
This is the final process in our last year's fiscal year, and I'm going to ask Morgan Scar from Amatic CPA to come forward with her stack of papers. Yeah. I'll help her part out.
I just did some that I had.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Would you like to sit down?
I'm fine.
You're fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. You've already received these in your packets, but I find it, it's larger every year, so I tabbed sort of the sections that I'm going to hit, unless there are questions on the specific items. So I'm Morgan Scar, the Amatic CPA Group. We've been doing this audit now for a number of years, and as always, appreciate Jesse's help in getting this done in a timely manner, because then we'll have to submit this to the Government Finance Officers Association by the end of the year. So I'm encouraged to do this with this one. The first tab there, so tab number 1, is our first report in this packet. The rest of the packet, other than our reports, is the responsibility of management, and that's what this report basically says. And then our responsibility is to issue an opinion on this. Our opinion is unmodified, which means clean, which is what you're looking for. That's the highest level of assurance that we can provide. So it states that basically we believe these financial statements are materially correct as presented here. And then the second page discusses some of the other items in there that we don't fully audit. Some we do audits and we provide limited assurance on, but it's all within the standard. So like the statistical section in the back provides a lot of incredibly useful information, but not something that falls under the purview of the audit. The second tab, all the way in the back there, is our second report in here. So this is called the Report on Internal Control and Compliance. And for people who are savvy at reading these, this is where people always turn, because this is where you put problems right in the very back. So it defines deficiencies in internal control and those different levels of deficiencies that we can issue. Material weakness being the most severe or significant, should use the word significant, the most severe, and we didn't find any that we can rise to that level. And significant deficiency is the next level down below that, and we have one that we disclose to you here. And then also we have one compliance finding. So a couple of pages back on page 126 is where we talk about the actual findings. So as far as the compliance finding, I'll start there. This is one that's been recurring for many years, and it's a compliance finding in terms of Montana Code annotated specific requirements for budgeted deficits specifically. And it's something the city has chosen to eliminate the budgeted deficit, or the deficit in SID 180, eliminating it over time as assessments are collected rather than incurring additional external debt to eliminate that. The result of that is this compliance finding until the deficit is eliminated, but that's still a smarter financial move. However, Montana Code annotated then says if you have a budgeted deficit, we're required to report it. So that's the reason here. The next finding is the internal control finding, and so this has to do with a segregation of duties issue over cash receipts in the utility billing department. But I want to very specifically say there's over one tiny section of the receipts that are collected there. It's not over all of the utility billings. And it's just one person has control over that specific area. So inherently, there's a lack of segregation of duties there, but you'll see in the report that you see there, management includes their responses to that and has come up with an appropriate way to mitigate that. So I anticipate that going away next year. The following page addresses last year's findings, and last year's findings are both current year findings, however, even less severe than they were before because both have been improved upon. So, in the very back, I'm not going to go over this, but I stuck another stapled piece back there that's a separate management letter, which is where we discuss the administration of the audit and some recommendations that we have to management. It's not something I'd go over in this type of format unless you have any specific questions on it or at a later point in time. But it's nothing that rises to the level of being reported in the report that we just went over. So more just comments for the most part. So, and we've gone over all those findings with Tessie, and they've actually all been corrected going forward, so won't be issued next year. Number 3 here, then if you go back to that tab number 3, which is back towards the very front, this is management's discussion and analysis. So this is really the best place to find a narrative and tables in the financials, less, I mean, it's still a lot of numbers, but it's the most plain English version of this. And it presents comparative information. It does last year versus this year, where the audited financials just do fiscal year 14-15. So, for example, on pages 2.5 and 2-6, that's an analysis of the entity-wide statements, and that's a really good place to start. It talks about some of the reasons for maybe the major variances or some changes. And then the remainder of the MD&A just does a good job describing really the significant activities of the government and its major funds during fiscal year. For someone who doesn't read these typically or doesn't want to read the whole thing, I always suggest someone start because it's a good overview from management too. It's not just the numbers on the page. So speaking of numbers on the page, I guess number 4 is the entity-wide statements. And so it's just a couple of pages back, the 4th tab. So this is all the activities of the governmental and business type activity or business type funds on a full accrual basis. And so you're typically looking at your governmental funds on I guess essentially a cash basis, so cash in, cash out. So debt payments are expenses in those funds. On this type of report here is all full accrual. So you'll see your notes payable, you'll see all of your fixed assets on there. So page 2-10 there is essentially just the balance sheet at the end of the year. And this one looks significantly different if you hold it up against last year's. And the big change on this is affecting everybody. It's basically the result of a new accounting standard that came out. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, it's got the new pension standard. The end result now is that each local government reports its proportionate share of the net pension liability and related items. So in English, the state of Montana's pension funds are all pension plans are all underfunded. So public employees, fire, police are all underfunded. Historically, that underfunded portion was reported as liability on the state's books. This now comes out and says that each city and each town in Montana, and this is in each city and town across the U.S. reports a share of that liability now. So on,
really thoughtful of them.
it's incredibly generous, yes. And as you'll see, it's a large number. It's about $4 million. And so the hard part is typically when you see liabilities on here, you see long-term debt. That's something that you know you will pay out. You know exactly when. You see exactly when that comes due. This isn't something that they can come collect from you at this point in time. It's more of an implied responsibility because at some point these pensions are going to come due and someone is going to be responsible for them. In order for you to be responsible for them, they have to raise rates, adjust for it that way. But clearly, and Montana's not even in the worst shape. I mean, there are states that are significantly less funded than Montana is. But it's sort of making it even more clear what the burden is as far as people who are working who have pensions that are outstanding that are not covered by the investments that are currently within those pension plans. So
that liability, excuse me if I may ask,
yes, please.
since you highlighted this, where would we find on these 2 pages? Is it?
Sure. So
liability?
under liabilities, you see starts accounts
Oh, right
payable,
here.
blah, blah, blah. The second from the bottom, net pension liability. So over in that totals column, that's $4 million. And then there are also a couple other components. So this now has, it's always been assets, liabilities, and net position or retained earnings.
Now there's deferred outflows of resources and deferred inflows of resources. That also came with these new standards. So those are related to pensions. Basically, you end up booking the full pension liability, Livingston's share of Montana's underfunded pensions. And then you're booking different components related to contributions that you pay just in the next, or in the current fiscal year, and the differences in the investments, basically in the realizable value of the investments get booked here, and then those will get adjusted each year going forward. So if you look at the next page, page 11 there, which is the statement of activities, this is really an income statement. The pension expense is nowhere that you can just call out in one number here. It's buried within all the expenses allocated on the same proportion as salaries are that incur those pensionable salaries, I suppose. But you can't run the whole $4 million through this current year, so it comes on as a prior period adjustment. So you'll see down at the bottom of this page 11, you see change in net position, fourth line up from the bottom. That's, and over in that totals column, that's about 1.6 million. So that's your net income for this year, even including the current year pension expense. So you had a positive, addition to the bottom line. You had a positive year in the black. Revenues exceeding spending by that $1.6 million. But then you've got this prior period adjustment of $4.8 million, which is the initial pension liability from last year, because it's unfathomable to run all of that through the current year. I mean, you can't have a $5 million or $3 million net loss a year because of this standard. So, but overall, obviously, the end result significantly decreases this net position number because you're booking a liability that has never been there in the past. So, a significant effect on your financials. The only consolation, I suppose, is that every single local government is having this exact same thing. And so, from a lending standpoint, or from other, I'm talking about incurring new debt, it's not your debt to equity ratio that's going up, it's universal. So lenders have indicated to us that they're well aware of that and are going to have to factor that in basically to how they evaluate all of your ratios and all your calculations and cash flows.
So moving forward, is this our liability now? We are making up the difference as a city, and also that's one question. The second question is that every municipality, including county government,
including all, yes, every government that has employees that participate in pension plans. And so it's a different number depending on what pension plans they participate in. And then back to your first question, it is your liability as far as it's reflected on your books. You still pay into PERS, MPERS, and PERS based on the rates set by those pension administration plans. Those haven't increased to account for this.
And we cannot pay more than the
You can't.
state amount, so,
It's
But this is
dictated
not a
what
general fund, right?
well, it's dictated by state law what we pay, so we can't pay more to pay down
make
this liability.
and nothing that you pay really hits that liability. That this is just a calculation each year based on the amount that they are underfunded. And so which is part of the point that putting it on your books is a very difficult thing to justify, because it's not something that you say, okay, we'll make a funding plan for this and pay this down over time. It's completely out of your control as to what gets booked there. Yeah, I know. It makes it
cool. That's quite a neat trick taken.
Yeah. 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 Same here. So then, start at page 5 that I tabbed is where your footnotes start, and so there are probably 40, 50 pages of footnotes. They're worth a read. They're a very good way to flush out some of the bigger numbers. Like we're talking about long-term debt, if you want to see how that comes due and what that consists of, there's ample information there. And then starting on the page 49 in those footnotes, there's about 20 pages of required disclosures that go along with these new pensions there. So really that's the major change that comes from last year, but there is nothing innovative. It's all dictated wording by, primarily by MPARA, so the Public Employee Retirement Administration put out wording on what's required on that. So I hadn't planned to go over the footnotes in any detail unless there's anything that you're interested in there. I'm happy to. Yeah, what questions does anybody have?
Yeah, is there any other further questions, clarifications from the commission? Only thing I guess I'd like to know is maybe have a little, maybe at a future meeting sometime, a little broader discussion on that liability
Yeah, we can talk.
and how if the municipalities aren't gonna take care of it, what we're showing, is the state gonna take care of it? Or they're not gonna take care of it because they don't see it anymore.
Luckily, I don't think that's the result. I think this actually will force more of a change at the state level because I think it's just to bring greater transparency to it. And they don't,
So now
if nobody talks about it, it doesn't really come up, but if it goes on every single person's books, people start questioning, even just you saying, let's have a talk about this, when it starts hitting your financial statements like that, that's a big deal. So,
just highlighting it so that we put more pressure on the state legislatures.
I hope that's the end result of it.
We can certainly do that. Yeah. That'd be fun. Right, is there any other questions, clarification? That's very good. We always appreciate this. It's a good report. I know Jesse appreciates it.
And I just want to thank Morgan and her team. Maddox has done an amazing job for the city of Livingston and very good at advancing our financial transparency and making sure our operations are as clean as they possibly can. And I really appreciate that because that's what I strive for. So thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Very well. All right, well, this brings us to city manager comments for tonight. Do you have any?
I do have a couple.
Okay.
So today was the last day for Becky Blankenship, who I'm sure on her last day of work is not watching city commission meetings, but she has worked for the city for over 30 years. And it was a sad day at the finance department. We are losing a lot of knowledge, but we are confident that we can continue on. This won't maybe be as jovial as it has been for a while. It is also the last day for Peggy Jacobson, who has worked for the city for over 25 years. So a combined 55 years walking out the door today. So it's a sad day for the city, but we wish them well and are excited for their next step. And that's all I have to say.
Mr. Stern.
Thank you. I have a few comments, and I'll try to keep them brief. One thing is I have some stuff here for the city library, for the archives. And thank you all for serving with me. It's been an honor to be with you all and with the administration. I've had a great time these last 4 years. And I think we've had some great accomplishments over the past 4 years. I'm very happy with the annexation policy that we got in. I think it's some great protections for the city. The Waterworks building, we started that process when Mel and I first got elected, and it was nice to see some resolution with that right at the end there. And the Parks and Trails Committee has really taken off and done some great work, and I'm very pleased with Mike's direction and leadership of the Parks and Trails Committee. I think it's gonna only get better. Mike's been doing a great job lately. And I'm also very excited about our new city attorney. I think there's some good new energy that our city's gonna have. There are a few needs for the city that I would like to highlight. One of them, of course, is one of the primary goals is to keep the continued CIP maintenance downtown and throughout the rest of the city. It's just critical that we maintain that going forward and not let that drop through. Not that it's going to. And it would be nice if we could continue progress on an off-grade rail crossing. But that's one's difficult, I understand. The garbage fund is still in deficit. It was in deficit before I started, and there seems to be a good plan in place. And so I would endeavor the administration and the commission just to keep an eye on that and make sure that garbage fund does come out of negative in the future. And then for long-term planning issues in the city, the annexation of the Green Acres subdivision is going to come up. That's a safety issue with the city, with the aging septic tanks there, and it's a natural growth area for the city. And in order really to protect the city's neighborhoods, that annexation is going to have to take place. I think everybody's on board with that. It's just something that has to be managed. And that will become, that's one important thing that can and should come forward in front of the commission in the near future. The planning for the east side of the river, especially on the east side of the river, going out on Park Street on the south side, we're gonna have to keep our eye on that between this hospital and the interchange of the freeway. Eventually, 2 decades from now, on the left side, on the north side of the road will be a neighborhood, like the Northern Lights subdivision. There'll be a neighborhood there, so whatever goes across the road, we're gonna have to make certain is consistent with there being a residential neighborhood over there and hospital over here. And so I'm certain that as a community, we can do responsible development over there that it's consistent with the neighborhoods and promotes economic development and all. Mostly, we just have to keep our eye on the development on the east side of town. And let's see, the area behind the Civic Center, since I've been involved in the local government, has undergone some change. It used to be a dump, remember when it was all fenced in? So the stuff has been moved out, the fence has been taken down, and the Parks and Trails Committee has been looking at options on what to do back there. At some point, maybe given a continued lack of funding, maybe we just end up putting grass there. And it's worth noting that the Baseball Association is gonna work to put in trees. I'm on the Baseball Association. We're gonna put in trees, if not this year, we're gonna put in the irrigation this year and the trees in next year behind each bleacher in the baseball fields. So maybe that will help. Maybe we can do something similar in the area behind the Civic Center that requires irrigation, take advantage of some economies of scale. I really think that rehabilitating the area behind the Civic Center, even if it's just grass, will make a big difference in that whole area. And I've really enjoyed my work on the planning board, our work on the planning board, and that's one area in the city that I'd like to continue my involvement with. So hopefully I'll be back in front of you all shortly. The last thing is to talk about the plan to hire the new city manager. I missed the meeting 2 Thursdays ago, and so for that I apologize. How was that?
Oh, you mean the community meeting?
Yeah.
I thought the community meeting was great. There was a lot of good input, a lot of, a good variety of people showed up and, gave us some positive insights about what the community is looking for in regards to city manager and how we might craft that into the request for job applicants. I thought it was real well.
Good. I'm sorry to have missed that. I do have a few observations on the process, really just personal observations on hiring executive leadership, and I'll finish with these. One is that I feel like we got to go beyond just the traditional routes to find a city manager, not just list on the city manager listserv, but really to find someone, the ideal candidate. I know you don't want to be prejudiced toward particular geographic areas or something, but we want an executive who has experience doing this, that perhaps lives in one of the high-density population centers and is tired, has made their money, or at least has made enough money for them, and is tired of rush hour traffic. And that's where I think we're going to find some high-end talent that's willing to come to Livingston for the relatively low wages here. I know there's a lot of professionals in town, my wife and I included, who moved here specifically for the lifestyle. Our wages are a third to a half of what they used to be, and our lives are a great deal wealthier. We live a much wealthier life here, making less money. And so I think we can find some high-end executive talent that will have similar motivation. And so I would encourage the group to advertise beyond just the city manager listserv or whatever it might be. And there are options. There are options you can pay for. There's options that are free, but I would encourage to move beyond that. And then the content of the advertisement should also reflect the great opportunity someone might have to move here. You want to get away with that one airplane advertisement, and it could very well be the advertisement for Livingston. You want to come live in a great place and raise your kids in a great town and live in a, you know, in a great area, come be our city manager. I did see Miss Loewy's email recently where she talked about a timeline and had a description, and she said preliminary reviews will begin January 31st. That sounds a little quick. I would think you'd want the ad to be out there for 2 or 3 months, sort of thing. But if you guys think it's reasonable and it can happen, it's fine. One of the reasons why that timeline is a bit, well, I guess separate from the timeline. And the last thing about hiring executive talent is the best way to ensure that you don't that you do get a really good candidate is to do a huge amount of effort into their background. You can't just call their references. If you got to, let's say we're hiring someone who is a city manager elsewhere. We wouldn't just call the city commissioners and their references, but we would call all the old city commissioners and the members of the library board and the union leaders and the leaders and memberships of the sports organizations and the Kiwanis and the Rotary and anybody else you could think of that they might have had contact with to get a full comprehensive picture of the candidate. Now that will require an enormous amount of effort, and that's why I think it's important to do this as a community when at least it gets whittled down to a half a dozen or so candidates, 4 or 6 candidates. That's when you have community members going off in teams of 5 or 6 to contact as many people in their home communities, in the candidates' home communities as possible. And thereby obtain as in-depth a picture of the candidates as possible. And I think that's, if you don't do that, it's kind of a crapshoot, especially with executive talent. The horror stories in the hiring of executive talent are manifold. And so I think there's if you want to do it right, and you really want to get someone good that fits the community, we have to put in a lot of effort as a community. Conversely, if we do put in the effort and a lot of community members help out and we do all the research, then I'm confident we can get a really good candidate. So that's all. So thank you all for your time and thank you all for your patience. And that's all. I yield.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Stern. It's been a pleasure. Commissioner Freedom. Yes, wow. I've really enjoyed the last 4 years and looking forward to the next 4. I think it's an important time period coming up where we can really move forward, especially with economic development being number 1. Yeah, maybe sometime in the future to get a Galton College on board. The community college is part of it. It's been a tough struggle, but I think we have a lot of parts of it in place right now. I think we go forward and really do some good work. I think we can, as a commission, be more visible to say the downtown people, other committees, kind of take the pressure off the city manager and get involved and report back. So that would be my thing. So I'm looking forward to it, and I want to wish everybody a safe holiday and good times with family and all that. So it's been a pleasure being here, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Hopa.
I want to thank Adam for his hard work and guidance. Always willing to come with a lot of information. I appreciate that. And I'm glad you're back now and joining us. One little quick note, I got a robocall the other day and I wanted to throw this out to the community. I don't know, have you heard any others? Okay, so I got a robocall that said that I had, my water was gonna be turned off by the city. And I was like, I just got my bill and it was like negative $3 or something. And it was like I just paid over. And so I called the city right away Monday morning and it realized that it is a scam. And I want everyone to know, and if you know anyone who has gotten a scam, to make sure that they're not calling the number, because what they're doing is asking you to pay it online and or over the phone. And I mean, they said mine was like $280, and that's a lot of money to go out to some person in some other
Nigeria.
country. Yeah. So just be careful, and I'm glad to hear that you heard it otherwise. It's kind of funny that a city commissioner got the call and I was able to.
And just for the public's information, the city finance office does not have a robocall. We will never contact you by phone. If you have a delinquency problem, you'll get a little yellow note from us in the mail.
So other than that, I just wanted to express that to the community.
You done? Thank you. Well, I have the great pleasure of awarding Commissioner Stern. Clap. Appreciate it. I'd like to say that Adam provided a job well done. He did a lot of good work for the city of Livingston and provided a lot of good insight, and always was prepared, always gave thoughtful comments. They were well thought out, and really appreciate it. And we'll miss you. Thank you very much. That's a pretty nice plaque there. How did you put that up? Let's see. The only other thing I'd like to mention was we saw the reports at the end of the packet, and I was wondering if we saw the water, sewer, and garbage. Are the projections meeting, exceeding, or under what we thought for these particular funds?
My most recent analysis shows that water and sewer are very close to projections. Solid waste is coming in higher than projected, which is always better. Shannon, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that's what I saw in the last summary that you sent out. So I think we're ahead of schedule.
So probably no big surprises like we saw maybe earlier last year.
I hope the only surprises are good surprises.
Okay. Very good. The only other thing I'd like to mention is that I did talk to Montana Department of Transportation, Rob over there, and asked him for some conversation emails going about the speed limit sign. And he said that, that was about the best they could do on the speed limit, and it has to go through their commission. And they were hoping to get some comments from the commission regarding this hospital speed limit safety study. In fact, their commission needs comments from us. So if we can get that on the first or second meeting of January.
When do they need those comments by?
They need them, I think if we had this on at the second meeting in January, it'd be in time for them. And then he also offered that the state's traffic engineer could make a presentation to the commission if we so desired it, so that we would understand the process and how they arrived at that conclusion of 55 miles an hour. So I don't know if the commission would be interested in finding that. I know the hospital would. So that would be something maybe first week, second week of February. Probably best. Well, that's all I have. Is there any public comment?
Yes, I have a couple questions for the Commissioner there. When Morgan was addressing the finances of the city there, her voice was so soft and she did not speak directly to the microphone. I did not hear the unfunded liability, the dollar amount of the unfunded liability of the city.
The unfunded pension liability, total for the city is $4,124,565.
Okay. Now, the finance director suggested some various financing options there, and she gave an APR rate of like 1.25, or let's just say that. There now, is that is renegotiated on an annual basis, or is there? Can you sort of tell me how this is set up?
The intercap adjusts their rates every year in February, and for the next fiscal year starting July.
Okay. Now, I just would like to address, I was so grateful that Commissioner Hoagland mentioned the robocall. I would really suggest that you write a letter to the editor there telling people about your experience, because as you can see by tonight, not everybody in Livingston was here tonight to hear your comment. And there was, believe it or not, there was one other thing. But I'm going to let it pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Is there any other public comment for this evening?
Mike Gomez, 611 North D Street. It's going to be a lot of happy dog owners in this town. Thanks, guys. I got me. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, in the past years, the city has waived the 2-hour parking limit during the holidays. So, Jim, is that going to happen again this year? You know?
Yes, it is. There's been no 2-hour parking enforcement since Thanksgiving.
Okay, but officially we have like a 2-week span that we notice.
It won't resume until after.
Okay, so a lot of people don't know that. So I don't know, we want to advertise it, or how do you let people know? So yeah, in the past years, you guys had to vote on it when it was under the police department, and then when the code enforcement took it over, they kind of just do the whole thing. One more thing, the Adam mentioned the area behind the Civic Center. You guys did a great job cleaning it up. There used to be a big old trash pile back there, and that's one big improvement that happened there. We're still working on that. One of the first things we can do is to move that skate park out of there. The skate park committee has been working on that. They did get their 501c started, so they can start raising money for that. But that's one of the first things we have to do is move it out of there. We can't just get rid of it. It has to be moved. There is an area that we have set aside for it, and hopefully next, well, pretty soon, hopefully we can get started on that. Once it gets done, then we have to think about what we're going to do with that area down there. We do have a couple of studies going on for that area. The sewer study, that's still,
And it's complete.
is it?
It is.
Okay. Because there is no sewer back there, and the old civic center is on the septic system, and so in the past when it's flooded, the toilets don't flush. Have problems with, just septic system. So we got to move that out of there. Part of the plan that the committee came up with was putting restrooms in there. Well, obviously you need a sewer system before you can do that. So good. And the other study we had was a drainage system, the drainage problem. Because there is a drainage problem back there. If you guys haven't looked at it, there's a big old hole down there where we got a name for it. It's called a lake. But anyway, so it does collect a lot of water and snow, and their cars get stuck in there and stuff like that. So we had to kind of solve those problems, and we start looking at what we can do with the area back there. One last thing, the chamber hired me to do some lighting for them around the civic center. So you guys get a chance, drive around there and take a look. I've got some reindeer up there. I got the banshee lit up there. And a couple lights in the civic center. Looks kind of neat. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate it. Is there any other public comment?
May I come back for one final statement?
Very briefly, sure.
Very briefly, I just have one question to ask the commission. How many dogs are allowed by residents in the city of Livingston in their property?
There are 2 licensed dogs allowed.
Okay. There is there's a brick apartment right across from the mental health building. And when I go to my car in the morning, there are 2 adult pit bulls and 3 to 4 pups. And I think this is in violation of the city code, and I would like somebody to look into that. I don't have the address, but it's right behind, in the alley of Bob Jobic's office, right directly behind him in the alley. There's a wire fence, and I just would like the proper people to take a peek at it, because I had several peeks at it, and I thought I know you passed an ordinance, and I thought I just want to find out a little bit more about it. Thank you for letting me talk the second time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Patricia Grabo, 204 East Calendar Street. First, I want to thank Adam and Mel for 4 years of hard work. We really appreciate the kind of hours that you put in, the meetings you've come to, your devotion to duty. It is really appreciated by the community as a whole. And Adam, I'm so sorry to see you go. I think you have handled this job with a great kind of almost largesse, and you have been impeccable. Gandhi said that in time, love and truth will come to the fore. And I am just so grateful that you made the decision to run, even though I didn't vote for you. I learned that was a mistake, and I apologize for not doing that. So I just want to say how grateful we are as a community. Really, really, really appreciate this. I have just a couple comments, just questions. There is that audit at the library? Can the public have access to it?
It is available on the website, and then I will take copies to the library. They probably won't have them until later this week.
Really appreciate that, because there's a lot of people that just need to work with the book. Another person I want to say thanks to is Becky. I'm a little concerned that Becky took over the cemetery and having buried my sister and my brother there. Becky was amazing to work with. She was kind. She knew what she was talking about. She took great pride in her work. I really would like to see a person with that kind of ownership take that position. I know right now it's going to be distributed among the employees in the finance department, but boy, we need another Becky, please. And when you're in grief, when you're trying to figure this out, when you're just trying to find a burial plot, for heaven's sakes, you need another Becky. Wouldn't hurt if we had a plumbing inspector as well. The other thing that I want to commend Shannon on, and I want to ask this city commission to really look at seriously, and it's in our proposal for the 2016 National Park Centennial Economic Development Plan that I've gone over with all of you. You approach Livingston, and we don't talk to the 3 million people by signage that is even reasonable. We don't even think about it. But we have proposed 2 years ago that we go City Center, Livingston, Montana, Yellowstone Park, exit 337, with a historic sign that says original rail entrance to Yellowstone to the Depot Center. And now if we can move ahead aggressively, we can also have public bathrooms there, because Warren McGee did that whole drive and he says, you gotta turn off at Livingston for a public bathroom. He tested his bladder. And we really need that 2 miles and then 1 mile and then turn off. And we need it to 3:30. There is no reason we can't get the kind of communication with 3 million people to have them come to our downtown. It's not easy to get to our downtown, and so Shannon has said that this commission has approved that concept. And Shannon said he'll work on it, but I think it's something we should take very seriously and get really aggressive on so that it's in place by next summer. And the other thing is, I commend the URA on having a wonderful workshop on bonding, on taking a serious look now at, in order to continue with the URA, you have to bond. You have to go out for a future with the URA. And DA Davidson did a very good job. And what's happened is I have imposed upon my friend Sean McLaughlin to upload it on YouTube. So if any commissioners are going to be interested in seeing that workshop on bonding, it was well attended and the person showed a great deal of insight. So I just wanted to tell you that it's going to be available. I'll email you right away with the link. But mostly I want to say thank you so very much from an appreciative community. You have no idea what you've done. You don't know the long-term implications of what you're doing right now, but it's there and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. I guess all in favor, say aye. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 7:47.
It was 20 minutes off.
This guy's a
Feels fine. I mean, the only thing that hurts, like I said, is the bruise on the top of my knee. Otherwise, I'm good.
He's ready to shoot hoops.
You know, get the goal. It starts getting sore. Just stay down.